Hey guys, it's Mather here once again, and today I'm going to be showing you a bit of the Fakener action on beta. So, the Fakener build that everyone should be fairly familiar with at this point, which is the cast on crit Cyclone Discharge, and it's on beta, so there's a few changes here and there to make the build function a little bit differently. It's still basically the same build at its core, it's just a bit changed in a few things, mainly the defenses, I suppose you could say. So this here I'm showing you is my first Atziri run on the character. I'm at about level 80, and it's kind of a struggle. For the amount of gear I have, it's going far worse than I would have liked it to, or it goes far worse than I would have liked it to. So I do have a 6-link Vol's Devotion, 6-link Vol's Protector, and a Vol's Devotion. So those two items alone are fairly expensive combined. Everything else is pretty cheap. There's nothing else serious on the character as far as gear requirements go. But considering I'm using a 6-link, I expected a bit more consistency from the build. But the largest problems I face at this time is the leech changes. So Fakener relied pretty heavily on being able to leech back to full life almost instantly when hitting anything. In this current leeching environment, single target leech is pretty abysmal. So whenever I'm attacking, as you will see with these vials quite shortly, whenever I'm actually attacking single target, if I only hit just the one target, like excluding those adds, I get almost no life back. It's barely enough to even sustain my Cyclone. So right there I have something like 90% lightning resist thanks to Flask as well as Purity. So I don't take too much damage from ball lightnings, but I can't out-leech it to save my life. A lot of my sustain currently comes from flasks, life flasks, which is kind of not ideal, but it is what it is. So the AoE leech is absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with it there. You still steamroll things and leech back instantly. But the single target leech is it's a bit of a problem. And this paired with the fact that Ondars is no longer useful, and because Ondars is no longer useful, I do not use Grace in the build. Also because Grace costs more mana than it used to, unless you have an Enlightened gem. So I can't really run the old Aura setup quite as easily as I would like. That said, you can still go with Grace and a Purity, something like that. Problem being, you don't get Ondars anymore because it's not good for this build, which means going full evasion is kind of less useful. So the way I decided to kind of build character this time around is just to have a much higher life pool and sustain off of that. Life pool plus damage. Fortify attached to Whirling Blades as well, so you try and keep up Fortify from Whirling Blades whenever you think you're going to be taking a buttload of damage. It works out just fine for the most part, clearing maps. Clearing maps is actually not really any different, but the single target fights like the bosses of maps and potentially things like Atziri right now kind of struggle thanks to leech changes. As you can see, I took some damage there, and trying to get life back is a pretty big struggle. I can hardly out-leech my own Cyclone just to get life back off of Atziri, and I'm pretty unhappy there, as you may see. Um, Taking damage kind of just stops becoming an option at this point, because I can't take too much damage during fights like this, because you just can't leech it back in time. So I'm relying almost entirely off of my life flasks to get my life back up when I take damage. So I have to just do a lot of kiting, and it's really unideal. Um, that said, it also kind of feels like there's a bit less damage than I used to have, even though the numbers don't really indicate otherwise. When I compare this character to my one on standard and live, it seems to be about the same damage numbers, but Discharge does have one less crit currently on beta. Aside from that, I don't think it should be much worse, but it doesn't feel too great. Considering I am wearing a 6-link right now and a Vol's Devotion, it should be damn near capped on my damage. This is another example of some single target leech that just gets me nowhere. As you can see, I'm just took a couple of big chunks of damage because it's a pretty tough bear, and I don't leech it back at all. Like, granted, Union of Souls monster doesn't take too much damage, but I'm relying almost entirely off of flasks to sustain. So then there's just a bit of a map clear here. The map clear, as I said, hasn't really been affected too much. You can absolutely blaze through maps and do quite a lot of AoE DPS and some good AoE sustain, because leech on AoE is still good, and your AoE DPS is still pretty amazing. The real problem comes in when you start getting to the higher maps, where monsters get more life and more damage. Even the most basic of monsters start dealing 4 to 5k damage in hits and might kill you quite easily. Just because yeah, it's you have to start running some of the tougher map mods, and any sort of damage on the map mods currently, paired with the monster damage and increased map levels, feels like it just starts to do too much damage. That's what I've experienced anyway. So I sped up this last bit of the map for you just to show you that, yeah, map clear is still just there, and you'll still have a lot of fun on the build, even without a Voll's Devotion. You do quite good DPS, even without a 6-link, but I don't think it's particularly worth running anymore without the right equipment and a fair bit of investment, as opposed to before, whereas it was just a good budget build. To show you my setup though, I do have a 6-link Voll's Protector, which I got lucky with linking. Just using custom crit, life leech, usually increased area for clearing, level 20 discharge, blood magic, and cyclone. Cyclone does not need to be leveled at all, because as you level it up, it'll give you more mana cost and doesn't really give you anything in return. So you'd like 20 quality on your cyclone, you'd like 20 quality in discharge, that'll help your AoE clearing much better. And I'm using increased area effect as a 6-link because it feels very beneficial to have a larger area in your cyclone and discharge to just as a defensive measure. I've got a pretty decent Vegan dagger here. I do recommend a Vegan dagger if you can get your hands on one. It really eliminates the need for any sort of accuracy. So right now I just have absolutely garbage rings, but it doesn't matter because my rings only really need life. I'm very capped on resist, so that doesn't matter at all. Using a rat's nest as always. Got a fairly high life shield without too much evasion or resist, so that could definitely use an upgrading. A triple resist pair of boots with life. Don't really need the resist there either. I am severely overcapped. Caramelagaras. That's good for your procs and for your DPS, because it's one of the few places you'll actually get crit multi in the build. Any old belt with life will do there, and a Voll's Devotion, which you can now farm yourself up on beta in Dried Lake, but it's still a pretty bad drop rate. I expect for the price on this amulet to at least go down by a few exalts thanks to that method. So if it was 20 exalts before, I would say it's going to be anywhere from 12 to 15 now. That's my assumption, but don't hold me to that. As far as the build goes, I'm currently level 82 with almost 4.7k life, which, as you can see, should be a pretty significant step up from my previous character, which was level 94, and he only had 4.3k life. So the larger life pool is definitely something you're going to be going for on the beta version of Fakener. That is largely because of the jewel sockets. So I started as a Sun on this character. The passive tree still looks very, very similar to the old one, except this time I'm grabbing a few jewel sockets and putting in life in each one of those. Once you get better jewels, the build should ramp up a bit better as well, because these are basically just one stat jewels. I'm only using them for their life. But yeah, the passive tree is fairly similar. Difference is you don't get Ondas or arrow dancing as it's now called, because it's complete trash for a melee build. And yeah, it allows you some other free points to just spend as you see fit. At this point, I'm going to be just grabbing more damage. I have not taken Acro. I feel it's not quite worth the 5 points you now have to invest to get to it, because you're no longer going for Mondars or anything around here. I chose not to do that. I do have Voll Pact, and it helps for Reflect and instant Life Leech for large packs, but yeah, as you can see on single target, it's still pretty crabby. Aside from that, using a Golem just for a bit of extra crit. My aura setup I currently went with is just Purity of Fire and Purity of Lightning, as I previously had, and I'm just filling in Herald of Ice to help with the Elemental Equilibrium triggering. Otherwise, there's no real need to have it in there. Won't really get any too much extra damage anyway. But this is the current setup I've gone for, and as I mentioned, didn't go for Grace just because not that evasion based, and as a Scion I'm not going through here, so I won't get that extra evasion either. I think there could still be some refinements and fine tuning to the build, and that'll be to be seen on live or at later dates, I think. I haven't played around too much with the build, just got to level 82, and yeah, it still works, it's still okay, but I think Leech will make it, I don't know, in some cases just not as fun as it could be. So anyway, this was the Fakener demonstration. If you have any questions, as always, come by my stream and I'll try and answer them for things I may have left out. But yeah, thanks for watching, and see you guys next time.